Hi,
But
Jamie
I'm gonna turn
Floyd.
my I'm gonna turn my AC off though, Sujay. So do you want to start over? Because it's too
Okay,
loud.
it's
Okay.
okay. Is it off now?
It is.
Okay, let me just ask, do I have your permission to record you and to use this for LTV and social media?
Absolutely. With
Thank you
with
so much.
pleasure, and it is my honor to be with you.
Thank you. So I am with the inimitable Jamie Floyd. That means she can't be duplicated, replicated, imitated. She's one of a kind. And it is my honor to be your friend, number one, but to be interviewing you today. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
So we go back. This was our 30th anniversary of being White House Fellows. We were in the Clinton Gore White House. I served in domestic policy with President Clinton and Carol Rasco, and you were
Yeah.
with Vice President Gore and also with the First Lady's office. Tell us what your assignment was that year.
Well, I started out with Al Gore, as you mentioned, and about partway through, he dispensed me off to Hillary Clinton's healthcare war room, which we renamed the delivery room.
Yes.
And I would run into you, Dr. Sujay, in the hallway because you were working on domestic policy as well. And this was a domestic policy effort.
Yes.
And so I was there for a good bit of time until we sent that healthcare bill up to Capitol Hill. And basically, I was doing the same thing for soon to be Senator Clinton
Yes.
that I was doing for Al Gore, and that was communications work. I was a communications person. And the work I did for Al Gore when I went back to the vice president's domestic policy office was around community policing, community empowerment zones, earned income tax credit, youth violence. I was on a
Yes.
youth
Yes.
violence task
Exactly.
force. So things related to my background in criminal law had come from the public defender's office in San Francisco, and before that, private criminal law practice. So I brought all that to, I did some judicial vetting for
Oh
the
my
Supreme
goodness.
Court and the federal courts. Yeah, so it was exciting. It was an honor to work with Al Gore. He's a good man, and with, of course, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
We had
It
no
was an
idea.
exciting time. We
It
had
was
no
so
idea.
exciting.
We
Had
had no idea.
no idea how far we'd come, how far they'd come. It was interesting because after they left Washington, they came to New York, to Harlem, where my church was, and I went back to
That's right.
pastoring. So I began to see she was then still First Lady Clinton before she
That's
became
right.
senator. I saw her more than I saw the president, but it was just wonderful to kind of be part of that circle. But now
And he put his office, Sujay, did he not, up on 125th Street
three
in the
doors from my
Patterson
church.
building?
Yes.
Right, right.
So I saw him often, but then he was asking me to help him with his wife who wanted to become senator. And she came to
Mhm.
my church the last Sunday before she became senator. So we say we helped
Mm,
her win. But,
mm.
then we worked with her, of course, for presidency. But then there was the first African-American president, Barack
That's
Obama.
right. That's right.
And so how do you feel now? There's a nominee for the first African-American
Mm.
president. How are you feeling now? Full
Oh
circle.
my gosh. Well, it's so interesting, CJ. When we were back in the day, when we were in Washington and young, and you had your baby boy, your young son,
That you babysat for.
Alaman.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think we could have predicted the twists and turns that the political future held. I mean, we were children of the 60s, right?
Yes,
So we
exactly.
had seen some things. I mean, we were babies, of course, but we knew from whence we came. We knew about the assassination of Dr. King and of Bobby Kennedy and, of course, JFK and Malcolm X. I mean, and the protests in the Vietnam War era and the
And
civil
my
rights
parents came
marches.
from Jim Crow era. So,
Of
they were the
course.
Southerners. So that was our
Yes.
framework. Yeah.
Yes, and my father and mother were arrested as your parents also came from that tradition. So we knew that those kinds of times had been and could come again. But
Yes.
I mean, the twists and turns we have been through, the election of 2000, which was decided on just 500 some votes in Florida. And now here we are with this moment in time where it feels like it's been months since Kamala Harris had this in the palm of her hand, but this has only been a couple of weeks.
It really has. I mean, a year ago we couldn't have predicted. But let's talk
No.
about that. So you own Jami Floyd Media LLC, and
Hmm.
part of what
Hmm.
you do, you're a journalist, you're a civil rights activist,
Hmm.
but you want to make sure that marginalized voices are heard. Why is that
Yes,
important
that's
to
what we
you?
do. That's what we do. Well, because I was a journalist after I left my work with you in the White House, I went on to a career in journalism after having been a criminal defense attorney and public defender. And my goal has always been, I thought of myself as a civil rights journalist.
Hmm.
And my goal has always been to tell the stories that aren't being told in the mainstream media, to
Oh,
get
yeah,
those stories of innocence out there, innocence, people who've been wrongfully convicted, stories of women, especially women of color. You know, we hear
yes,
so much about missing white women, but I want to talk about a lot of other missing women we never hear about. I
exactly.
want
The
to
hidden
talk about
figures of history. I mean, they're hidden figures.
figures of history.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to mention also to you, Suji, I don't know if you know this, but my time in San Francisco was the same time Kamala Harris was in San Francisco. We graduated from law school the same year.
Oh my
The year
goodness.
she became a prosecutor, there were no Black prosecutors in the Bay Area.
Wow.
She was a trailblazer then. She's a trailblazer now, obviously. But the Bay Area, always a diverse place, but not a place where there were a lot of Black women lawyers. We were a unique group of people. There were very few of us. That's why I knew her then.
Yes.
And she really, it was not a meteoric rise. She did a long, hard, twice as good, twice as smart, working twice as
Still.
hard to be standing in court next to that other lawyer that she had to stand next to prove herself to get where she got, which is this moment in time. So I've known her a long time,
Which is
and
awesome. I
a lot
remember.
of other people too, Gavin Newsom, and a lot of people who are on the stage are Bay Area people, and
Mhm.
they've had to earn their stripes over time.
Interesting point. So I run a nonprofit called Women on the World Stage, and it
Yes.
lifts up women of color who are now on the stage. What does it take? I mean, I remember seeing you for the first time as a journalist on ABC, and I screamed. I was like, I know her. What does it take to get
And
there?
I heard you screaming.
I know, because it was loud. It was 2 states away. But what does it take to be a woman on the world stage?
Mm. Well, I do feel that we're held to a different standard. Even now, all these, I mean, look at how hard it is to be a woman in politics. Let's just take
Yes.
that one example.
Hmm.
Uh, the questions that are asked about something as frivolous as appearance. I mean,
Yes.
why do we spend so much time talking about a woman's hair, for example?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
what she's wearing, Hillary's suits. If I heard another person ask about what Hillary Clinton was wearing, nobody was ever talking. I don't remember any conversation
Ever.
about anybody else's clothing. I mean, there was the one time Barack Obama wore a tan suit and the
Yeah.
media exploded, but
Exactly.
generally that was unusual.
Was the same
So it's,
trajectory is hard for a journalist going into
yes,
a network?
yes. Yes, it is. I mean, I think the women who came before me
Mhm.
definitely did some trailblazing for me. There's a woman, Vicky Mabry, who
Yes.
is only slightly older than I am, but she was the first Black woman on 60 Minutes. There's
Yes.
Connie Chung, who was a friend, and Vicky's a friend. Connie Chung, who was slightly ahead of me, who was the first Asian woman co-anchor with Dan Rather. There's
That's
Diane
right.
Sawyer. There's Barbara Walters. But these women really had to hold their head high, and they had to avoid being typecast, always being asked to do the light story, the soft story. They
Exactly.
wanted to be hard charging journalists. They wanted to,
Exactly.
be in a war zone, just like the male correspondents and the
Exactly.
male anchors.
Exactly.
And so there, and then I know that Katie Couric, who's
Yes.
a contemporary of ours, she too had to fight to make her way in the business when people told her she wasn't going to make it. So I
Very
do
much
think there are
so.
different standards for us,
Yes, and different
and
routes.
it is that same old thing, Sujay, that we hear as Black people: twice as hard, twice as smart, work twice as long, and then when you're a woman of color, now you've got the double
Yeah, the
whammy.
double standard, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not taking the express train, we have to take the local. We have to stop all along the way. My
And there's a
neighbor.
delay. There's always a delay between tunnels, between
Exactly.
stations in the tunnel.
Exactly, for a long delay. So my neighbor in the Hamptons is Lindsay Davis, and I interviewed
Oh
her
yeah, of course.
This show's called Headliners of Hope, and she talked about Carol Jenkins helping hold the
Yes.
door open. Who have you held the door open for, and have they appreciated it?
You mean people who've come behind?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's great that she mentioned Carol Jenkins. The woman who held the door open for me was a woman named Carol Simpson,
Okay.
who
Yes.
was a Black woman anchor at ABC News, where
Yes.
Lindsay is now,
Mhm.
who was such a good friend to all the Black folks coming up at ABC when I was coming up. I mean, she was wonderful, and she hosted World News Tonight on the weekend. She was Peter
Maybe it was
Jennings'
Carol Simpson.
counterpart.
Actually, it was. Yeah, definitely.
Because there is also Carol
Yeah,
Jenkins.
exactly. Carol
But
Simpson.
these Black women are real trailblazers. I have always taken great joy, Sujay, great joy in mentoring the people who come up behind me. And I do look out, especially for young Black talent coming up behind me. And when I say talent, I don't just mean in the media
Exactly.
industry.
Exactly.
I mean, everywhere in law. There's a young White House fellow coming in this year. I'm so excited about him. And he came to me, Sujay, through one of our classmates, Kevin Grimes, who's a
Yes.
white doctor at Stanford. But he said, this
Exactly.
young Black man's going to want to talk to somebody who had a similar experience. So I've been coaching him through. He's a doctor. I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor.
And that's interesting. It's a good point, because it's not just Black women. We certainly want to make sure we mentor Black women, but there are also men of every ethnicity. We had an unusual White House Fellows class of 93,
It was
94,
wonderful.
and we're still very close as a class. What does it take to excel? Does it take groups like the White House Fellows who are friends and collegial? What does it
Mhm.
take? If I had A plus B plus C equals success for the formula, what's your A,
Right.
B, and C?
Right. So just buttoning up the mentor answer, because I think it ties into this question you've just asked.
Yes.
My mentees are a diverse group.
Yes.
They are all ages, all races, classes, sexual orientations, and I learn from them.
Exactly.
They
Exactly.
bring me joy. And then as they mature, they support me and they help me, and it becomes a friendship. I
Exactly.
think what we got out of that fellowship is really what it helps, what it takes to excel. I learned, I don't want to speak for you, I learned to communicate with a group of people who were so different from me. I
Yes.
mean, you and I had more in common because we were both New Yorkers. We were both we were both Black women of color, parents who were civil rights activists.
Yes.
So I might have known you anyway,
Right.
but I still learned a lot from you.
And you were Lower East Side, where I served. Yeah.
Right, and you were Bronx. But the military people I learned from.
Yes.
We had some Republicans in the class, and I came from a very traditionally left-leaning Democratic. My parents were active socialists, so
Exactly.
I had to open my mind. And I
Yes.
think that's the secret to success. And I think that's where our country needs to get back to. We
Very
need
much
to
so.
open our minds. We need to bridge back to talking to people that don't think exactly the way we do. We need
Exactly.
to learn to remember how to communicate.
Very
That's how
much
this
so.
country was built. The
Yeah, I was
founders
looking at
didn't get into a room and all agree. They
it
had to.
can't. You can't. It was interesting. NBC Nightly News had this, had young voters of all sides of the coin sit
Mhm.
together, and they were saying this was the first time they talked to people other than themselves, and that's what's being portrayed as them only being against abortion or whatever was not accurate. Like, they have their own
Mm.
opinions now. They're coming through college, and they want to talk with people who are different than themselves. And I think that's what the joy. We would sit with Colin Powell at lunch, General Colin
Right.
Powell, and then at the same time, Vermont Governor Madeline Kunin, who was, at the time
Absolutely.
secretary. So we had the diversity. What's your hope? This is called Headliners of Hope. What's your hope for
Well,
America?
my hope, and my belief
Hmm.
is that we can get back to a place of collaboration, of coalition,
That's
of
the word. Yes.
communication. I mean, I really believe that is the best of this country.
Yes.
And I believe we've been away from it for too long.
Very much so.
And so when Barack Obama talked about hope and change, the change I was hoping for was a move back in that direction.
Mm, mm.
And we were there for a bright
Well,
moment in the sun, and then that
yes.
sun seemed to set. It set. The sun set.
It said, but I think we see the peaks of it again.
I do. I think look at the joy that is people are experiencing with this
Oh,
new campaign.
by the thousands. But let me ask you this. So President Biden said we
So
will
that's my hope.
for the soul of the nation. And
Yes.
almost every guest I've interviewed, even if I don't bring faith up, says that faith has been important to them. What
Yes.
undergirds you? What keeps you from becoming unglued when things are crazy?
Well, faith is very important to me, and I do try, and I'm not gonna fib to a minister. I don't get to church every Sunday, but I do try to go.
Not
But
anymore.
I do believe God is, the Lord sits on my shoulders, and
Yeah.
I am with God all the time, and God is with me. But I do find, Sujay, that when I go, I'm more joyful. My step is lighter. I'm more at peace. I'm reminded of my purpose in a way that I'm not if I don't go to church on Sunday. So there's that. It doesn't have to be Sunday.
Exactly. Nowadays, it can be any day of the week, and particularly now
Right.
that we have digital church as well. So,
Well, yes.
yeah,
Although for me, I mean, I was grateful to have it during COVID,
yeah.
but I really find sitting in and I have my church that I go to, but sometimes I visit other churches. Like if I'm traveling, or even here in New York, I will visit a church in a different neighborhood. Like you used to have church down on Wall Street.
Right.
I would go there. I visited you at Mariners Temple. I sometimes go up to Harlem for the tradition of Harlem, because my church is not in Harlem. Or sometimes I'll go back to my old church where I used to go when I was in high school. So I will visit different houses of worship, but being in a house of worship is very meaningful to me. The other thing that gives me hope, Sujay, it's the young people. It's the young people.
Yeah, we have a great young people's army actually forming. It's wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And they are, I feel they for a time they seem dispirited and disengaged, and now they are just I heard a young woman this morning, in fact, it's interesting that you asked me about hope, who is elated to get out there and vote. And also, and she had always planned to vote, but to be hearing her, and she's in college, and she will just be 21 in time for this election.
Oh, so this is her oh, that's awesome.
And she is actually this will be, I'm sorry, I take it back. She was old enough to vote in the midterms the last time. But this will be her first presidential election.
How exciting.
This will be her first presidential election. And she's very excited to hear her friends who were not planning to vote talking about voting for the first time, because they have checked out and they had not been voting. So there's a new enthusiasm about not just politics, but policy, and putting it into practice amongst young people.
So speaking of policy, you're also on the community board number 7. So you're on the national stage, international stage even, but how important is the local stage? Why is it?
Oh my gosh. So excited. I love the community board. I'm so glad you asked about it.
Yes.
So yesterday, okay, this is so granular, but so during COVID, all the restaurants put out, and not just in New York City, all around the country, put these outdoor seating areas.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And now the question is, what's going to happen to those outdoor seating areas?
Exactly.
Do we get to keep them? Do we have to take them down? So we had a long meeting yesterday. Or do you get fined? Oh, I hate a fine. I don't like a fine.
Well, those are the options now.
Those are the options. So we had a long meeting, middle of summer, but we all showed up. One woman showed up from Amsterdam.
Oh my goodness.
She showed up on Zoom.
Wow.
I think she was far away. She wasn't here. She was on another time zone. And there she was. She was dedicated. These people, we're our dedicated local citizens wanting to do, and this is all volunteer. We are not compensated. And there we sat talking about the rules under the new regime of what are now going to be called roadway cafes in New York. They're called parklets in San Francisco. I love it. And I'm on transportation. I'm on that committee also, different committee. And we talk about things like speed limits and how to make curb life safer for senior citizens and families with strollers,
Yeah, one
but
of my
also taking
90-year-old friends just got run down by one of the
terrible,
bikers on the sidewalk and
terrible.
never stopped. And she's 90 years old. I mean, it's just like we have to have a
Yeah.
new respect for each other. That's what
Yes, getting back to what we were talking about before,
yeah,
communication, coalition, and also how do we all live together in one community? I
yeah,
understand you want to have your bike. This person wants to walk.
right,
This person is in a wheelchair. We
right.
all have to live together. And that's why I love the community board, because that's about how do we all live together in one community, and enjoy our city.
And keep it flowing and keep it growing
Keep
and
it
growing.
flowing. Keep
So,
it flowing.
and people here, New York, and it's sometimes it's 8 million, 11 million, somewhere between there. But we're made of communities, small communities, and that's what makes
That's
us
right.
thrive. That our neighborhoods working together, doing the work that you're
Right.
called to do. So, do you ever have aspirations for greater work in terms of
Well,
politics or
yeah.
even in the networks?
It's funny that you asked that. So, I'm writing a book right now.
Yeah, tell us about
Um,
the book. Let's do that first, because I know.
okay. Well, I'm writing a book, and the book is about a man whose work was so significant and meaningful and long lasting that we're all still enjoying the benefit of it. And that is Thurgood Marshall.
Yes.
We think of him as the first Black Supreme Court justice, but long before that, he was changing the laws that undergirded Jim Crow so that people would have access to the polls and Black people could sit on juries. I mean, Black people could not sit on juries in
Wow.
certain states in this country. I mean, but if you were charged with a crime, you certainly would be prosecuted.
Exactly. And a jury would take you down, but you couldn't
That's
be
right.
part of it. That's very
That's
interesting.
right.
So
So
what's the name of
he
your book? Can you share what the name of your book is
yes,
going?
of course I can. It's interesting. It's called you've already alluded to the title. It's called Dream Interrupted.
Ooh,
Searching for Thurgood Marshall and the struggle to save the soul of the nation.
wow, wow.
Um
Now, we only have one
and
more minute, so I need us to wrap up and tell me about kind of what's your hope and tie it into Thurgood Marshall in your book.
Well, my hope is that we can keep the dream of Thurgood Marshall alive. He believed in the soul of the nation. I mean, he
Mm,
could see clearly what the problems are, that
yes,
this is not a perfect country. It never was, but we are trying to become that more perfect union. And as you said, Sujay, we are a series of small communities and neighborhoods,
yes,
Main Street here, Main Street there, all around the country, but we all want the same thing. We want
exactly.
to live with liberty and freedom to pursue happiness
And justice
and
for all.
justice for all. And if we work together, we can achieve that goal.
My last question, really quickly, in my 30 seconds. So I have a book, Balancing Your Life. How do you
Mhm.
balance your
You
life?
have several books, but yes, that is
For
one.
that one, mother, journalist, activist, author. How do you balance your life?
I begin each day and end each day in meditation and prayer.
Wonderful.
And family is
Yes,
the key to helping me balance in between.
great. I have the three F's: family, faith, and fun. I have to have all of those. And then I have to have water. Anytime I'm near
Oh,
water, buy water. So I'm good. I'm good. And my pool is
I have coffee.
okay. Okay.
Maybe I should go to water.
Well, thank you for joining us. We've been talking with Jami Floyd, the
Thank you for
incredible
having me,
woman,
Susan.
and thank you for being with us. I hope you come back again, and it's great to see you. And thank you. Keep on and keep hope alive, as Jesse Jackson said. I'm Susan
Thank you.
Cook. This has been Headliners of Hope with Jami Floyd. Thank you for joining us.